transportation. If visa not issue, airplane can bring people from all over the world. You know, it's not possible. Like even 20 years ago, it would be more difficult. Today, I remember when I was a kid, nobody traveled much. You know, maybe not nobody, somebody traveled, but most people didn't travel. I think it's too hot already. It's already hot. I'm kind of like tempted to say we have 3 more days to go, but no, my monks and nuns, they're going to be continuing. Yeah, the fact that they're going to continue make me very happy. I want them to have no obstacle, That's the thing. In the Dharma path, it is not easy. There's so much obstacle, difficulties you face, especially when you're making progress, challenges. There's all these, how do you say, cleansing taking place actually, Then it's like this, difficult, to almost like grind your teeth, Yeah. You see, that's the thing. When you have a hard time, difficult, that's when you have to hold your spiritual ground together, You know, the idea of discipline, really discipline, this comes in. Steadfast. Yeah. Yeah. And he who has discipline, there's a saying, he who has true discipline, obstacles will not be able to, nothing can create obstacle to it. The one who doesn't have discipline is the one who's carried away by obstacles, all kinds of things. And then, you lose your thing. Yeah. And actually, that's one of the reasons why Lord Buddha recommend taking vows, discipline. When you're disciplined, there are forces. There's the forces of Maras and others, who doesn't like you making spiritual progress, want to challenge you, you know, like that. There literally is so-called forces of Maras, It's not just one being, host of beings, others, all kinds of challenges. And yeah, the external obstacle will be very minimum if you have discipline, keep vows, But you still have to face your own inner maras, afflictions and other maras, like that. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Vows, vows and disciplines, absolutely important at the for a beginner practitioner. Without that, you will lose track. This is what you call, when you're in the path, you go off the path, you know, like that. Then you get lost, sidetracked, lost. Then it might take quite a bit of time to still get back to the path again, like that. Spiritual path really is a journey towards enlightenment. And in our case, we are a Buddhist. So for us, it's a journey towards perfection, our own perfection. Because our goal, like I said, it really is perfect Buddhahood. Understanding of Buddhahood is perfection. See, we all have this potential to be that. We work, thanks to Buddha, he demonstrated that perfection and he taught and he showed us the path. Now we're walking on the path. We too can become perfect, So towards that goal, yeah. Towards perfection, actually, it's a long way away. But, human birth is so precious. We really can make tremendous spiritual progress in single lifetime, Yeah. And Tantra, Mantra, Vajrayana, and secret Mantrayana path promises actually enlightenment in single lifetime. Possible, happens rarely, but its possibility is always there. And it's because teaching is precious and practitioner in history, a great practitioner in history, are the evidence, So if we're to put hard work, we too really can, attain. Yeah, make, yeah. At least first step enlightenment is possible in single lifetime. Actually, Vajrayana Buddhism. By the way, some of you are kind of new here, and then I want to specify this. Vajrayana Buddhism, Tantrayana, Mantrayana, secret Mantrayana, they're all referring to the same thing. Okay, I want you to know. There's just different ways of referring to the same thing. Yeah. Um, yeah. And then when you say Tantra, then maybe you might have heard a lot about Hindu Tantras too, There exists a Hindu Tantras, Buddhist Tantras. And yeah, some of the techniques that Hindu yogi, tantric yogis use is similar to, I think, Buddhist Tantra teachings. But one fundamental difference is Buddhist Tantra is based on Bodhicitta principle. You see, that really is the defining characteristic of Buddha's teaching, Bodhicitta. See, Buddhist tantric profound techniques, all based on that. And by the way, etymology-wise, Tantra means some kind of continuity. Okay, it literally means some kind of like ju in Tibet we call it. It's continuous. So it has always been. It is. It will always be type of thing. The you know profound truth or profound revelation has always been, is, it will always be. Only from Buddhist point of view, only issue is sometimes it's available to everybody. Other times only to very few qualified people, to say a qualified enlightened guru to qualify enlightened disciple. It only happens just small number of people like that. But it always exists. This kind of understanding. Very interesting. Um, Ultimate teachings, primordial truth has been revealed, has always been revealed, and it's revealed, and it will always be there type of understanding, actually. Yeah. And then there's some part of interpretation is that actually it need not Nirmanakaya Buddha, sublime Nirmanakaya Buddha to do anything. It's inherently available. Is that kind of understanding. But Shakyamuni Buddha's unique activity made it possible to the, how do you say, greater audience. This is the distinction. Vajrayana Buddhism is not only, doctrine based on primordial truth, but it's now available to everybody. So this is what makes that kind of unique Buddhist Tantra, okay? And now, again, in Buddhism, enlightenment, real cause of real enlightenment is not these profound techniques, this, that, no. It's Bodhicitta. This is, we have to understand very clearly, You practice these all kinds of esoteric techniques of kundalinis, this, that, opening up your channels and so on. No Bodhicitta, enlightenment is not going to happen. Something will happen. You might be opening up channels where you might, have a little secret passage to higher birth. There are many levels of God's realms and others, superior realms. You might be one of those places and things like that only. Buddhahood is not going to happen. True enlightenment is not going to happen. If the Bodhicitta is missing, it's really not going to happen. That's the real cause. Buddhist and non-Buddhist. Yeah. It's so interesting. There's Buddhist Tantra and non-Buddhist Tantra. Today, many of these tantric things, so-called among the scholars. They call it Shaivism. Kashmiri Shaivism somehow. I don't think it's very long history, but they trace it back to some Shiva-based Tantra, this, that, Hinduism, and so on and so on. So they claim that they're the original teaching, and then somehow we Buddhists copy that from them, and so on and so on. But it's so interesting. There's a Shiva Tantra, okay? Yeah. Now, with all due respect to Hinduism, and Shaivism and so on, and I do not mean to disrespect them. From, how we really see from Buddhist point of view, Shiva is not Buddha, neither Brahma nor Vishnu. They're a very powerful being, but they're some kind of very powerful worldly gods, very, very powerful. Brahmas are really virtuous gods. In fact, Brahma is Buddha's disciple. Look over there, this Tanka. Brahma is the one with the wheel, thousand spoke wheel, offering to Buddha. When Buddha was in earth, when Buddha became enlightened, he went into meditation, deep meditation. The Brahma knew it was time to request Buddha to teach. This was the story from that, by the way. Okay, like that. So, talking about Tantra and so on, when I felt saying the Shaivism, there's a Shiva Tantra. I didn't read Shiva Tantra, but I know Chakrasamvara Tantra, the Buddhism, Buddhist Chakrasamvara Tantra. And I was told by somebody some scholars said that the Shiva Tantra and Chakrasamvara Tantra is the actual Tantra text, word for word. It's completely identical. Only difference is where in Buddhist Tantra as a words where it says Chakrasamvara, they have words Shiva, 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 Shiva. That's the only difference. So amazing, huh? And then the other interesting part is, Mount Kailash in Tibet. How many of you know Mount Kailash? It's a very, holy abode, very special mountain, very unique place. And there are a lot of stories about that. And then in Buddhists have a lot of, consider this a very holy mountain, holy site. And one of the belief is that this is a Chakrasamvara mandala, abode of Chakrasamvara. Chakrasamvara is a deity. Huh? Yeah. Interesting. Chakrasamvara deity is standing position with bell, dorje like this, standing position. Where's that in the feet? With Chakrasamvara's feet? Chakrasamvara is stepping on. Shiva and Parvati. Shiva and its consort. Shiva male, female, Chakrasamvara subduing that, standing on it. Yeah. It's a part of what it is. When you do Chakrasamvara practice, and you have to go beyond, so you have to kind of and Shiva God is a very powerful being, and Chakrasamvara is completely, how do you say, victoriously overwhelming that, and practice like that, and so. This is actually, many of these deities have on their feet, they're kind of subjugating like that, Interesting, huh? And because Buddhist Tantra have this kind of thing, I heard then later Hindus have also drawings and where they have Buddhist deities under their feet. So interesting, I heard that. I didn't see any, but I heard they did that too and so on. So okay, back to Mount Kailash. This is Chakrasamvara as abode and mandala. And then Hindus believe it's Shiva's abode, Shiva God, abode. And Hindu go pilgrim site. Yeah. And Lord Buddha had also, Lord Buddha was there too. There's a story that Lord Buddha's footprints in Mount Kailash. And then, yeah, all kinds of stories anyway. And then, addition to Buddhist and Hindu, we Tibetans have another spiritual tradition called Bon tradition. Right? Bon people also consider Mount Kailash their holy site too. So it's actually a holy site for three traditions. Interesting, huh? Yeah, Mount Kailash. Dharma path. It's so beautiful. And if you keep on working, like this, Nyungne is, then yeah, then enlightenment, the so-called enlightenment, it's it's real possible, right? If you don't do anything, then nothing will happen. Yeah, practice is really the key. Huh? My enlightened guru always emphasized on practice. He, in my monastery days, we didn't have how do you say, we didn't have a study classes and things like that. And there was some criticism towards my guru that his monks have no education type of thing because we didn't have classes and so on. And then and my guru was also asked once in a while why he's, he he didn't emphasize on education. He says studying and knowledge only has a limited purpose. Yeah. And then the other thing is he has also seen a lot of people who study a lot and then they're all into ego trip. So they're genuine, how do you say, lucid mind, sincere, initially like very sincere, all gone, So I think that's part of the reason why he was not interested in encouraging people into the academic path, so to speak. And he explained like this. He said, actually, listening and studying, and listening and studying. Main purpose is to really come to a true faith and confidence in Dharma. That's the main purpose of that. And if you believe in Dharma already, if you have a faith and confidence in Dharma, then you don't need to waste time and just practice. That's his main thing. Yeah. And actually, it's true. Transformation is not going to happen just from knowledge. Huh? You could be. There's a saying in our Buddhist community that even a very very learned, erudite Buddhist scholar, if he didn't practice, the day he died, he would be no different from any ordinary being, because he never practiced anything, and because he would be just like any other ordinary being, even though he was so learned, like that. Yeah. Maybe not all scholars going to be like that, but maybe some people, their mind is so hard, and it could be, right? Yeah, yeah. So practice is where transformation really going to take place. Yeah, and then you sincerely practice. Huh? Yeah, yeah. And your transformation also depends on how hard you work, how sincerely you work. You see, those are the kind of things also. Yeah, yeah.
it also depend on finding the right guru?
Huh?
Does it also depend on finding the right guru?
Of course, of course. Yeah, finding an authentic guru really is the real thing. Yeah, yeah. What to do, at the end of the day, it's kind of karma too, what you find, who you find, and so on too, A lot of people like to say this, that, so on. If you say like you didn't find a good guru, I hate to say this, but it's really your karma, you know, it says if you found some crooked guru, I hate to say it, but it's your karma. Really, you want to like to blame everything on the guru, but you had something to do with that yourself. And that's a fact. How could it be otherwise? Why I didn't find crooked guru, you know? You see, like that, right? And this is one thing people have to understand, actually, a lot of the time, like as if, blame is squarely on somebody else all the time that you don't have any responsibility type thing. This is, yeah. Yeah, authentic guru, finding authentic guru really is the answer. Yeah, that's what it's called enlightened lineage. You see, enlightened lineage, guru, really. Not just any lineage, but real, thing. Even the time of the Buddha, our Buddha, some of his students, they had so much spiritual search. They had search, and they went, and there were, I guess at that time, there were a lot of gurus too, all kinds of gurus available. And they went to gurus, they went this, that, and some of them had really misled by other gurus, and they went through. It must be some kind of their karma to have to go through that. And finally, all kinds of hardship, difficult, finally met Buddha. And then they were able to overcome all that. Like stories like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometime, I wanted to, I mentioned this a few times, I said again, people's pure faith and devotion, whatever even if they believe a little piece of rock it represent God or something, you know, it's not in my opinion, it's not the fault of the faith and belief. Okay, it's it's a shortcoming of the person's own karma and things like that. That he ended up believing a rock is God. Yeah. Why I'm saying this is that the faith itself, by nature, is really pure. What you ended up believing in, having faith in, is completely dependent on your karma. And then people like to think it's the fault of the faith, the idea of faith. I don't think so. Yeah, yeah. Generally, it's a some kind of pure thinking. Naturally, you don't know exactly what it is, but someone like to say a very primitive tribe, and life is hard and difficulty, even hunting, doing very hard life. That's that. In the night, it gets dark, and you're lost and confused. And morning sun rises up, And then some deep appreciation comes in your heart. Sun is coming every day. Every 24 hours, sun shows up. And then you start to feel deep appreciation. It's like, oh, sun is the God. It's every day coming. It's appreciated. And then you worship sun, like that. So my point is, it's positive quality. The faith, it's belief that the sun is God and so on. It's positive, not negative. This is the thing. And then you ended up believing in something that's completely not good. That's really your karma. Yeah, this is how I feel. Yeah. You agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay, John agrees. Weather forecast says today is going to be cool day. Tomorrow, and day after tomorrow, a little bit hot day again. Yeah, actually, fasting day hot is not that good, right? Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Problem of our existence will be solved. We'll keep on doing prayer like this, you see. And then those who did the hard work in the past, they solved their problem a long time ago. And we're trying to solve that right now. And then those who do in the future will solve their problem too. And those who didn't do, they will probably will remain for a long, long time. That's how samsara is, right? Yeah. And then you see, that's the thing in Buddhism, the beautiful thing about it. Our aspiration to solve this problem is, it, it has to be, and it is. The only reason is that we want to help. We solve our problem so we can help others solve their problem. We have a problem we cannot help. See, this is what that thing is. So help others, you know. And your courage and strength, stronger the strength, and quicker you solve that problem. See, this is where courageous bodhisattva and not so courageous bodhisattva story comes in. Strength, right? Yeah. Yeah. Shakyamuni Buddha, see, I mentioned many times, considered one of the most courageous bodhisattva. He made a vow to demonstrate perfection at the time it's, you know, difficult time, like that. Amazing, huh? Yeah. Buddha phenomena, Buddha activities always amazes me when I think about it. How amazing it happens like that, In history, Buddha miraculously shows up in planet Earth with everybody else. That's a true miracle, How he perfectly demonstrated perfection, you know. Yeah. Perfect form, perfect speech, perfect mind, Amazing. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the cause and condition of pure speech? Maybe it's a long one. I don't know.
Pure speech? perfect speech, cause condition for perfect form, perfect speech, perfect mind, all is perfect form, whatever physically you do perfectly is cause for eventual perfect form body. Speech, whatever correct speech you have, verbally, honorable speech, virtuous speech, beneficial speech, true Dharma speech, prayer, mantra recitation, so on, the cause for ultimately perfect speech, Buddha speech. And then from your mind, starting with Bodhicitta, all perfect thinking, correct, virtuous thoughts and beneficial thoughts and so on. And then when mind eventually becomes perfect, then you have a perfect Buddha mind, Buddha-like mind, you see? The cause condition. Yeah. And many of the things that physically we do right now, prayer, offering, practicing physically like generosity, and all these are basically cause for the benefit of sentient being. When you become perfect Buddha, then you have perfect activity. Yeah. Is yeah. These will cause you to have your perfect inline activity. Cause conditionless. It's like that. All our prayers always have 7 branch offerings and so on. So these like that. You continually accumulate merit, power of virtue. When power of virtue is completely, perfectly when you are perfectly virtuous, guess what? When you're perfectly generous, perfectly virtuous, you're enlightened. First step, enlightened. That's what's called perfection of generosity. Yeah. First Bodhisattva, hood, is byproduct of that particular quality. And others, of course, but that's primary quality. You see, like that. Yeah. Okay, we have to start now.